Hey guys, good afternoon. I'll just have to say this, right? Yes, I've been ripping Democrats for not fighting hard enough, for being too wedded to order, conformity, norms, sequence, good governance, basically. I've been ripping them for that. Now, let me say something. This is a bit of a nuanced point I want to make, but let me say something right now. For the record, the way the Democrats govern, the way they run things, that is supposed to be the way countries are run. Most advanced democracies in the world govern with a fealty to facts and expertise and reality. They govern with a fealty to decency. They govern with a with a certain I would say relative altruism when it comes to the people they govern. They govern, for the most part, most advanced democracies govern to take care of the whole, govern to take care of everybody rather than just a select few, right? For the most part. Now there's just asterisks there. Of course, we know corporatism is a plague everywhere, but the way the Democrats have governed and the way they have at this point they reflexively and in their sleep tend to govern is the way the country should be run. Taking care of social safety nets, worrying about the environment, worrying about climate change, worrying about making things better for people, worrying about a fair taxation system and things like that. That is the way a country is supposed to be run. Being nonpartisan, right? When it comes to infrastructure, when it comes to social safety net, when it comes to certain things, you know? That is the way the country is supposed to be run. Unfortunately, when you, the good governance people, who you are reflexively, instinctually held by tradition, ethics, decency, norm, experience, expertise, when you run into a frightened, craven, fascist, bold, unapologetic, violent, white supremacist opposition that doesn't even care for the Constitution if it runs afoul of what they want, your good governance, reflex, your good governance sleepwalking, as it were, is going to not only be woefully inefficient, it actually works in the fascists' favor. Unfortunately, it works in the fascists' favor. And I need us all to recognize that. And at the end of the day, you can no longer govern or resist fascism via the rules of uprightness and good governance and effectively stop fascism. You can't effectively fight fascism if you want to hold on, if trying to hold on to good governance reflexes. In a sense, to fight fascism, you have to kind of be like the fascists to fight them. And if you have to be like the fascists to fight them, then the fascists have essentially won already. Because you have to break the system in a weird kind of paradox. Democrats have to break the system, break the rules, ignore the norms, ignore sequence, ignore precedent in order to save the system. And to further fortify the system, they have to be ready and willing to break those norms in order to stave off the guaranteed attempted return of fascism if you should prevail over fascism. And at that point, we have truly lost our democracy. This is no longer a democracy. When you have one half of the electoral machinery who is openly, unapologetically, and entitled fascist, violent, white supremacist, then then good governance and the rule of law cannot stand. That cannot stand. If you have two parties, right, who are governing a country, good governance requires the willing buy-in, a willing détente between both sides for good governance to prevail. And for centuries, that essentially was the case. That existed in this country. Even though various administrations went beyond the pale and stretched things, they still were helmed by good governance for the most part. There's certain things they just didn't do. They didn't try. But at this point, at the 250th anniversary of this country, we're seeing that détente fail. And with it, our democracy is failing. Again, Democrats, to fight fascism, have to kind of be quote-unquote fascist and be willing to be fascist in order to shore up the democracy from the guaranteed attempted resurgence of fascism if they were to prevail over fascism in this moment of time. And because they have to be willing to do that, because that is a necessary quality, because that is someplace the Democrats have to be willing to go to the last man and woman, then that means we do not truly have a good governance structure anymore. We have a shell of it. We have a pretense. We have a hollowed out shell. It's a costume. And we should all be very, very, distraught and sad over that. Yeah, I want the Democrats to fight. They have to fight because this is lethal for many of us. But we have already lost. It's just true. We have already lost. We have already lost, people. We've lost.
Mr. Perry just mocked us for referring to Donald Trump as a dictator, so let's run through the list. Donald Trump has, since he was inaugurated, pardoned violent January 6 insurrectionists. Dictator. Defied Supreme Court orders and attacked the judiciary. Dictator. Unilaterally abolished congressionally chartered federal agencies. Dictator. Attacked the free press. Sounds like a dictator. Kidnapped people off of the streets and deported them to foreign prisons without due process. Sounds like a dictator. Defunded higher education. Dictator. Threatened law firms and the legal profession. Dictator. This weekend, he is spending tens of millions of dollars to host a massive military parade for his birthday. Is this North Korea? On top of all of that, our twice impeached president with a 34-count convicted felony president who is not a king has deployed the active duty military in American cities, and he has spent $134 million to do so. He has their guns trained on American citizens without the consent of local authorities or the state's governor to purposefully generate chaos and provoke a reaction. Meanwhile, we have Republicans on this side of the aisle asking governors of states about bathrooms. Like, this is the most dystopian, horrific episode of Black Mirror that I have ever seen.
You can narrow or widen the aperture as much as you want. You can look at the very big picture or the small local picture anywhere in the country. And we try to do as much of both of those things as we can every week here on this show. But whether you're looking at small-scale local stories or the biggest picture stories about what's happening in our country, the story is the same, and it is now an undeniable thing. We have crossed a line. We are in a place we did not want to be, but we are there. The thing we were all warning about for the last few years is not coming, it is here. We are in it. This is what it likes, it turns out. This is what it's like, right? It's August, it's a Monday, every day the sun rises and the sun sets, and there are, sports and movies, and there are new hit songs, there are scandals here and there are crimes. There's everybody's personal quotient of family drama and health worries and money worries and falling in and out of love and in and out of faith. Life has not stopped, and none of our personal lives have stopped. But also, at the same time, life in the United States is profoundly changing, is profoundly different than it was even 6 months ago. Because we do now live in a country that has an authoritarian leader in charge. We have a consolidating dictatorship in our country. And it sounds melodramatic to say it, I know. But just go with that for a minute, right? Think in melodramatic terms. Think in cinematic terms. Imagine the cartoon-level caricature of what you think a dictatorship looks like. It's secret police, right? A massive, anonymous, unbadged, literally masked, totally unaccountable internal police force that apparently has infinite funding, but no identifiable leadership. And they act in ways designed to instill maximum fear and use maximum force. When you imagine an authoritarian country, right, what you imagine is masked secret police breaking people's car windows and snatching people off the streets and out of church parking lots and courtroom hallways and taking them away with no charges, no notice, no paperwork, no explanation, not letting them see lawyers, and then moving them secretly to what are effectively black site prisons, where they won't tell you who's there and where no one's allowed in to see what's going on. Right? And that kind of a cartoon caricature of an authoritarian country, the one you might have imagined in melodramatic and cinematic terms ever before we got here, you would expect, right, that you'd have a scapegoated minority group blamed for all things. In our case, immigrants, right? And the new extraordinary powers and shows of force by the secret police, among other things. All these extraordinary powers and shows of force will be framed as necessary to stop this terrible internal enemy, right? Frame everything as immigration enforcement. Because for immigration enforcement, not only is all force justified, but maximum force is preferred. And they're trying to make it into a national entertainment to threaten to feed immigrants to alligators in South Florida, right? They're making them eat off dishes on the floor like they're dogs. The Crome Detention Center in Florida. They want us to like that, right? The Republican Party wants to sell T-shirts about that. And if you think it's only about immigrants, take the president's own word for it when he says the homegrowns are next, and then he starts musing publicly about which Americans he intends to strip of their citizenship. In a cartoon caricature of an authoritarian country, displays of military might are not just for the country's external enemies, they're for the country's own people, right? Because in an authoritarian country, you turn military force inward toward the people of that country. And so now we've got these large and expanding military zones in multiple states where they have extended the legal boundaries of nearby military bases to include hundreds and hundreds of miles of nearby land. So they can give active duty U.S. troops the power to arrest and search people on U.S. soil. They're now doing that over hundreds of miles of territory in multiple states. Both The Intercept and The New Republic in the last couple of days have had new reporting about Trump administration plans to permanently integrate the active duty U.S. military into, of course, immigration enforcement. So we will have our own U.S. military troops mobilized on U.S. soil. U.S. military force turn inward on us in an ongoing and permanent way. For immigration enforcement, right? And, like they tried in L.A., to put down protests against the government, because those protests relate to immigration enforcement. What else do you think of when you think of authoritarian countries? In the worst case, you think of death camps. We don't have those. What we do have are black site prison camps, including huge new ones that are designed to hold thousands of people. The biggest ones we've yet had have just been bidded out to contractors for construction, and they're building them now on U.S. military bases. And they say they want states to build them all over the country. In the cartoon caricature of an authoritarian state, there's secret police, there's prison camps, there's the scapegoated enemy on whom all things must be blamed and against whom all things are justified. Protests must be criminalized. Media must be intimidated into saying and doing what the leader wants, or they must be shut down, or both. Universities must be intimidated into saying and doing what the leader wants, or they must be shut down, or both. Law firms must be intimidated into not opposing him and saying and doing what he wants, or they must be shut down. And for institutions like that, it's not just the boldest or most strident critics of the president who must be shut down. It's the most mainstream, right? It's the most prestigious, the most credible, because that's what's so dangerous about them. There can't be any source of authority. There can't be any source of authoritative statements of fact that compete with what the leader insists must be the new truth. And so government departments will be stripped of their experts, and he will fire his way through them until they tell him things that he wants to be told. If you want to be a 4-star general or admiral in this military, you must now pass a personal one-on-one interview with the president, who personally will decide if you are to his liking or not to be a flag officer in this military. The intelligence agencies will say that his strike on Iran obliterated their nuclear program because he likes that word, obliterated, and he said it once. And therefore, because he said it, it must be true. And if you say otherwise, you will be fired. The Justice Department will say that the president won not just the last election, but he also won the one before that, the one he actually lost. And anybody who points out that Russia tried to help him win the one before that should be criminally charged for saying that, even though it's true. We are not heading towards something like this. We are there. It is here. It is the environment in which we are now living. And so, given that you now live in a country with an authoritarian leader, the question is, what can you do for your country? The question is no longer how to prepare for this risk or how to try to avert it, but rather how to fight it now that it is here and in effect. And, you know, we're awake now. It's clear. We're all living here. It's very obvious that this is not going to get better on its own. This is not going to fix itself. An authoritarian just seeks more and more and more power throughout not just politics, but through all of society, systematically trying to eliminate any effective means of opposing him. This is a one-way ratchet if we leave it up to him. But that at least does give us some clarity for Americans who do not want to leave it up to him. Right? We're beyond waiting and seeing now. It is clear what is going on. It is clear now that these small d democratic tools that we've got right now as a country, these are as good as it is going to get. We are never going to have more resources to fight for our country than we do right now. And so Americans are using those tools, and it is worth paying attention to the ways they are doing it. They are filming the secret police and publicizing everything they are doing. Even when the secret police scream and threaten and say, you're not allowed to film us, they are filming them. They are following them everywhere they go. They are not letting them have the power of surprise. They are refusing to be afraid to watch them and record them and show what they are doing. We have opposition politicians, Democratic politicians, insisting on being let in, going to the black site immigration prisons and demanding to be let into them. We have Americans protesting outside those facilities and showing up and calling the media and pulling every string they can when someone they know or someone they know of gets taken. Americans are making it as sticky and annoying and awkward and embarrassing as possible for these guys, and that slows them down. Americans are badgering elected Republicans everywhere they're willing to show their faces, including tonight in Nebraska, Republican Congressman Mike Flood holding a town hall with his red state constituents. Watch.
Hi, I implore you to be quiet so that we can hear his responses. Remember, Mike's coming up for a re-election, and we'd really like to know what his responses are. I'm Rosina. I write you emails with concerns of your voting behavior regarding Trump and his actions. You support him, especially confirming the cabinet. Your responses are riddled with misinformation and lies. I fact-check you, and then I send the responses back. And I get crickets. If I am fact-checking them because they are wrong in your response, I send them back to you, and I get crickets. I get kind of bummed. And this is not about partisan. This is about issues, because we're about to lose our democracy.
My question is fiscal. With $450 million FEMA dollars being reallocated to open Alligator Alcatraz and $600 million taxpayer FEMA dollars being used to now open more concentration camps and ICE burning through $8.4 million a day to illegally detain people, how much does it cost for fascism? How much do the taxpayers have to pay for a fascist country?
That was in Nebraska tonight at a town hall held by Republican Congressman Mike Flood, him hearing from his constituents tonight. We have total clarity now on what Trump's intentions are for the country. But I mean it when I say we. The country gets it and is more against it than they've ever been. And opposing this administration and what Trump is trying to do is turning out to be the story of the century.